So let's go over here. Let's click one of these. I'm going to click Google, and it opens up. So it opened up in that same tab in the same window. If we look up here, we see that's the same tab. So you never really want to navigate off of your website unless it's like going through to a different part of your website, like a payment gateway. So if we're going to an external site, we never want to navigate off of our page. So in here, we add another attribute called target. So this basically says where should this link target? And we're going to say underscore blank, which basically means a new tab. So maybe in this one, you could think of an actual target, but you're shooting blanks. So none of them actually hit inside of your page. It just makes you think you have bad aim, I guess. So underscore blank. So now if I copy this and I click Google, oops, I didn't refresh. So that was the problem there. But now you see it opens up in a new tab, and my page is still open there. So the user can always get back to my page. That's the most important thing. All right, so those are links. And here, let's be developers, and we like to be lazy, so I'm gonna copy this with Command C or Control C and just paste it into these other links as well, versus writing that out every time. So that's the anchor element, or the link. Next, we're going to get into list. Lists are another important part of writing a document. So we have an unorganized list, and here I'm going to make a comment where I say unorganized. And again, that was Command /. And here you could probably even do the same, where you make a comment, anchor. And maybe you just say needs a href. You should always use, you can always go back and look at these and remind yourself of what they are. Like this could be headings here. And H1, most important. All right, so that's a way to make those comments, and especially when you're first developing, where you're creating comments and they're just little reminders, so you can always go back and look at this page and say, oh yeah, that's how I do it. So in here, we're going to make an unorganized list. So that's UL. That's a UL element. And inside of it, let's just say I put some text, like list item. I refresh and I go back over to this page. And one thing I want to mention before let me just refresh quick. I can see that that's indented, but there's no usually a lot of times lists have some type of bullet point or something like that, which this doesn't have, and that's for a reason. So let me just mention this before I get into it, that here we have all these anchor elements, and they're right up next to they're not right up next to each other. They're dropped below line, but as we can see here, they're all next to each other on the page. And that, again, has to do with they are an inline element versus these up here are block elements. The H3, the paragraph, those are all block elements. So if I wanted these to fall to another line, I could use something called BR, which is break, line break, basically, BR. And as you can see here, I don't have a closing tag that looks like this. And that's because BR is self-enclosed. So maybe here, I'm going to actually type out the comment this time. BR, or let's put self-enclosed element. And what that means is normally self-enclosed elements are because you can't actually add content inside of them. Like, I wouldn't want to add anything inside of a line break. It wouldn't make sense to add anything inside of a line break. So I don't want a child inside of this BR. Like, I wouldn't want to put another element inside of here. I wouldn't want to put text in here. So that's called a self-enclosed element. And it just looks like basically an opening tag. All right, so back down to our list here. And there's a few of these. One of the main ones we'll discuss soon is an image. You won't want to put anything inside of an image. Okay, so back to our ordered list. Right here we see list item again. Like, follow me here on the right, or I mean on the left in my browser window. I see list item. I see it's indented, but it has no bullet point. So what we need is elements inside of our UL, and those are called list item elements, or LIs. List item, unorganized list, UL. So HTML makes it pretty simple to remember. Once you do this a few times, you're pretty likely to remember, because it just goes with what it actually is. And it's, pretty much the first letter most of the time. So LI is list item. And here I could say list item. And again, let's click anywhere on this line and press Alt-Shift down. So now when I refresh my page over here, I see I have all these list items, and now they have bullet points. So that's what I want. So next, unorganized list is probably the more common type of list that we'll use. But there's also an organized list. And you probably already guessed it, that's OL for organized list. And then again, let's put organized list item. And then let's use our Alt-Shift down command and copy that a few times. Now when I go here, I'm going to see the difference is the OL has numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, it's organized. But we can also change these numbers by adding an attribute. So let's see how we do that. Letters. So Google is a big part of development. So you're going to be Googling things all the time. OL, or I guess, and then we want to put HTML. That's important so they know what we're talking about, like, oh, OL. So here, W3 Schools is a good reference to go to for HTML. In here, you can see here an ordered list with uppercase Roman numbers, and they put in this type attribute. So you can try it yourself, but you can also go down here, and down here we see attribute values. So right here we have type. And we can see that if we want numbers, we can use A. So let's go back in our text, and not all attributes work on all elements. Like, if I put an href inside of this OL, that wouldn't make any sense. If I put type inside of this anchor element, that wouldn't make any sense. So particular elements have their own associated attributes. I feel like part of this page is missing, but down here we see OL, and we could even go down to UL. And if you go anywhere in here and you start scrolling down, it will start to give you things like this value, type, attribute. And this might actually be, I might actually have to make okay, here it is. So I clicked the OL over here on the left, and it gave me some other attributes and their values. So the reason here, well, first let's just see what this type does. So we put type A here. And actually also, I'm going to turn on autosave. So it's right in, if you go in file, there's this autosave option in the menu. So that will start saving by itself. So sometimes you like it on just because, especially if you're someone who forgets to save a lot, like I tend to do. But sometimes it's a pain and you need to turn it off. So you just go into there and you turn into your file, autosave, turn it on or off. All right, so let's go look at that. So yeah, we switched all the numbers over to capital letters, and I think we saw lowercase letters there, and we saw Roman numerals. So let's try I here. And there's also lowercase Roman numerals with a lowercase I here. So that's type. Let's go here, and we see this reversed. But values, it just says reversed. So basically what this is an attribute that's either true or false. So by default, reversed is false. Like what that's going to do is reverse the order of the list items and how they're numbered. And if we just write in reversed, that sets it to true. So that means, oh yeah, we do want to reverse it. So if we go back here and look at it now all the numbers are reversed. Let's see if these are reversed. We can add a number to them. And let's go back and refresh. And it didn't actually reverse the content. It just reverses the numbers here. So now we go 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's good to know. So that's reversed. And then we also had start attribute. So I'm not going to do this with all the elements, but just in this case, we'll kind of go through it. So let's say start, and we want to start at 5. I'm going to get rid of the reversed for now. And let's refresh. And we see now it starts 5, 6, 7, 8. So it does that. It starts at a particular number. So just remember for this, reversed, you'll pretty much see the value will say, if it says the same, the value is the same as the attribute name, that probably means that it's one of those true or false type of attributes where by just writing it, you make it true. All right, so that's our OL. These are our lists that we have. And then let's just add a few more separators, which are self-enclosed. These are called HRs, and these are horizontal rules. So I'm just going to place a couple of them between our element groups. So HR, again, self-enclosed, and here HR. And let's refresh, and now we see these separators here. So one more thing I did want to point out is you see it more in these lists that, again, we have the parent here, and inside we have these other elements, these children elements. But you can also see, just like in our directories, that they're indented in, and that's to signify that relationship. So normally it's 2 spaces or 4 spaces. So you have to indent, and that's just good design. We could also, if we had these all next to each other, we can do that. White space doesn't really matter when it comes to HTML. And let me zoom out a little just so you can see that these are actually all together. So I can see this whole thing is together, but that's harder to read what's going on than what we saw before. So we see over here it didn't change anything, but it's just harder to read. And other developers, when they go look at your work, that you want them to be able to read it, especially if you're on a part of a team where you have to share this work. So let's go back to how it was. So good design is to drop down a line when something's nested like this, and then indent to show that relationship. Also, though, up here, I didn't do that. I could do that, but in like something like this where you have these inline elements, it doesn't make as much sense to kind of like drop down like this. Like we can do it, and you'll see that that can be done. It's going to look the same here, but I don't think this isn't really common practice, and it doesn't really add to it much in terms of readability. All right, so we went over the textual elements, and I'll go over tables a little later because they're just a little more complex. Not much, but next I just want to go over an image quickly. So let's put images, and then I'm just going to write that it requires a source attribute. So let's go to image. Again, an image is a self-enclosed tag, and this is the main one I was telling you about. That is a self-enclosed tag, and there's no point of trying to put text in an image or anything else for that matter. If we wanted to make an image a link, then we would wrap an image inside of an anchor tag or something like that. We could do that, but we don't want to put anything inside of an image. So as mentioned in the comment above, we need to add our source. And that basically says, hey, where is this image located? And then you also need something called an alt attribute, which stands for alternative text. So that's basically if your image doesn't display, it's text that people will see. So for some reason your image doesn't load up, or for some reason maybe somebody has a disability, they can't see very well, and they use a screen reader, it's actually it's a requirement that you have an alt attribute by law, by the Disabilities Act. Like your page will still work if you don't put it in, but whoever you're working for or you yourself can get sued. And that was a big thing a while back. Someone was going around suing a whole bunch of institutions because they didn't have alt tags and accessibility on their website. So accessibility is an important thing, and we'll get more into that at a later point. But for now, with images, I like to think of image as I think of some Polaroids of the group Nirvana, and they're covered with like a chunky spaghetti sauce. So the image in that case would be the Polaroid, IMG. The sauce, spaghetti sauce, is the SRC, or the source. So sometimes the words just sound similar. And then alt, Nirvana, is a alternative rock band. So alt, alternative text, Nirvana. That's how I think of that one. So let's actually go out here and let's grab an image of Polaroid, let's say, Nirvana. Let's go to images, and then let's click on this image. And if we click in here, we can see save image as or copy image address. So one of these is just going to copy the external address, and one is going to save the image to our computer. So for now, I'm going to copy the address. So let's put that in here. Let's zoom this in again. So luckily it's not that long. Sometimes these are really long, these external URLs. So what this is called is an absolute path. It links out into the world. It goes to this website, goes into this directory, and then the image directory, and then Zoomia's directory, so on and so forth, all the way till it gets to this where it sees the dot, which again, the browser says, okay, this is going to be some type of file. So this is a .jpeg, and JPEG is an image. So now when we go into our page, we see that image pop up. So maybe we say, oh, this image is too big. So there's also another attribute we can use with this, which is called width. So we can make this a percentage or pixels. Pixels are basically a fixed unit of measurement. So it'd be like a millimeter or something like that, or a centimeter or an inch. It's fixed. So let's say 200 pixels. And then let's give it, we won't give it a height because we want the height to adjust automatically. Now let's go in here. Now we see that image is 200 in width, and the height just automatically adjusted to what it should be. Now what happens if we actually specify a height? This is why we don't do that. So if I say height, let's say 150 pixels. And I go in here, well, look at the image now. It's all skewed. And that could be even worse if we, that doesn't look right at all. And that's why usually with images, we just want to specify a width and not a height. So there's another attribute that we just learned. All right, so let's go back out here, and I want another image. Let's get this one of Kurt Cobain here. And I say, save image as. Well, first off, here I'm already in my exercise 0, but let's say I'm back at desktop. I need to navigate to my root directory, or that primary folder that I'm using to store my website. And actually, also, I'm just going to put in a quick side note to make sure you watch that video on Visual Studio Code. And because it actually has a part about why it's important to open up exercise 0, and it talks about the root directory in more depth. So with that being said, I want to save this JPEG in there, and I'm just going to give it a name like Kurt. I'll just leave it at Kurt. So sometimes these names can get really long too, so we want to shorten those up in. So exercise 0, and now I'm going to save it. So when I look in here, I see that image is in here now. So let's first get over here. So it's important that we understand the path and what's going on. So just to explain it really quick, and this is also in your materials and your resources, it talks about the path in more depth and what happens when we actually go out to a web page. So let's say we go to google.com. What happens here is this address is specifically for humans. If we go here, and let me zoom out a little, we see this google.com. This is for humans. So that's so we can remember it. What this actually is what it converts to is a numerical representation. So if you've heard of an IP address, that's usually like 64.236.721. So it's something that would be really hard for us to remember as humans. So we're able to just put in something like google.com, and then under the hood, it does all this work for us. So basically what happens is that gets converted to an address, which is basically an address to a directory somewhere out in the world. So your internet service provider has a list of all those things, and when that number is entered, it knows where to go. It goes out to another computer in the world, which is referred to as a host and commonly referred to as a server, and then it locates this directory, which contains all of the web files and folders associated with the website. So this is actually a directory somewhere. So let's get back here. So back here, this is a directory, right? Our exercise 0. So it's almost the same thing as writing an HTTP google.com. This is just the path to our root directory. So it looks a little different, but it's essentially the same thing. So every time in a production environment I load the website, it's actually taking this path and putting that before anything in my website. So if I specify something, it's going to look there. So in this case, I just want to get that image. So I just say curt.jpg because it's already putting all this in front of it. So what that essentially is doing is this. Copy. It's essentially putting all this information there. The browser does that. So when it loads up your HTML page and you ask it for curt.jpg, it's automatically going to say, oh, you must want this from the directory you're already inside of, which in this case is our exercise 0 directory. So you're already in there. That's where this myfile.html is located. So it says you must want to stay in here and look for this image. So when we go back here and we load again, now we see this image. So this one, let's just change the T on here so the image doesn't load properly. And let's hit refresh over here. And now we see that alternative text down here, Kurt Cobain, right at the bottom of the screen on the left. So let's put the T back in. And actually, too, while we're at it, let's just add in the file extension just to show you it's actually working the same way. So I'm just going to drag this into here. Oh. All right, let's see. Oh, here's one here that says like copy path. So here you see relative path, and that's what it refers to when it's in the same directory as your files because it has a relationship. These are both children of the exercise 0 root directory. So those are relative paths. Copy path would be like an absolute path, like the HTTPS. So let's see. No, I don't want I just had the relative path. So if I put copy path and I paste that in here, see how I get that full path all the way from my hard drive to my desktop to all the folders we created to, actually, I clicked on the wrong one. This should say curt.jpg. And if I refresh, it's back. So that's essentially the same thing as just saying our browser already assumes all of this, so we don't have to add that. So these are the exact same thing. Refresh. Still works. All right, so we've gone through the textual elements of HTML, and we've gone through putting images on the page. So we're starting to be able to structure our page, which is the job of HTML. Next, actually, let's just get into tables really quick because the next lecture I don't want to make all about, just start with tables. So let's get into a table really quick. So here, again, I'm going to make a note called table. And actually, let's also refer to as tabular data. And here, I'm just going to start off with the element called table. So, and remember, if you forget this, you can always go out to W3 Schools. So this is something that you definitely want to bookmark. So you can create a bookmark and then create a new folder for Webdeversity and put all of the bookmarks that I mentioned inside of that particular folder. So W3 Schools, we can go to Learn HTML, HTML reference, whatever we want to go to. And here I see reference. So these are all of the kind of elements that we can use, but we're not gonna. You're only gonna probably use like 10 of these all the time. So you don't have to sit there and memorize this whole list. So let's go to table here. And in here, it's going to tell us about a table. So I can even go to I can actually copy this into my page and then say, okay. But instead, we're going to explain it. So let's look at this. This is kind of what it's going to give us. So if we have TR, that stands for table row. And then if you look here over on the left, this one says TH month. This one says TH as well. But down here it says TD. So TH is table heading. And then if we look again, those ones are bold over here, the table headings. So our first row should be table headings. So again, we'll say TH. And in here, let's put name. Let's just put first name. Then let's copy this down with the Alt-Shift-Down command. Put last name. And then go outside of our row and we need to make another row. So it's just like rows and columns is what we're making here. So we need another row. And let's actually add one more to this and say I'm going to go TH up this time. And I'm going to put student ID. All right. So now we're outside of that row. We create another row. And this time we don't want table headers or table headings. We want table data, which is TD. So this is like adding a cell. Table data is what that stands for. And it's first going to fill in the student ID, so the first cell. So let's just say 0001. And the next cell will be first name. So in this case, I'll just use my first name. And then in the last cell, again, is the last name. So when I go refresh on my page, and let's actually put a HR here again to separate things. But when I refresh on my page, I'm seeing this table at the bottom. So right now, this is a table. We just can't see the border. So how do we see the border? Let's go back to this table here. And now we can see attributes. Border 1. Okay. So border, and then we see the value says 1. So let's, on our table element itself, put border 1. And 1 specifies, I believe, how many pixels thick the border is. So let's see. So now I have a border. And there's some other ones in here too, like cell padding. Well, let's again up here, cell padding. Let's put, it says pixels. So we don't actually have to say px. It just gives us pixels by default. So let's say 5. We want 5 pixels by default. And we refresh and we see we got some space in here now. Okay, so let's copy this whole thing. Let's add another student. let's say 2, let's say Cameron Johnson. And if I go back in here and I hit, oops, I hit the wrong thing there. Go back here and I hit refresh. I went to hit save. I see I get another cell down here. So we see now we're making a table. And we're going to leave it at that for now. So we have our rows, our table, and then again you can check for other you can check for other attributes that we can use on that. All right, and we have our table rows, and inside of that we have those columns basically. Like first we start with TH for table heading, and let's actually put a comment, TH table heading. And then table data. And then I'm going to put slash cell. Or let's say column. That's a little better. And then here, that was TD. The comment here, TR, is table row. And that about does it for now. And so if we go back to our page, we have our headings. We have some separators here, which are called horizontal rules. We have our paragraph. We have some links. And remember, we put line breaks in here, which is another element, that BR element. We have our unorganized list here. Oh, one thing I did want to show you with the list. So here's another thing we can do is we can, again, this is an element that has an opening and closing tag. We can actually put other elements in here. I can put another list inside of here, and I can say, put an LI and say sub list item. Let's copy this down, click anywhere in there, Alt Shift down. We'll put 3 of those. So now when I go here, I can do that. And I could even make this a OL and give these numbers if I want to. I just did that. So let's put here, let's put a comment, nested list. Here, let's put sub list. So we can do the same thing in our organized. Let me just copy this whole thing. And here, by the way, let me get in that in 2 seconds. Let's change the type here to letters. So if we refresh, now we have this Roman numerals with the sub list items that are of type letter. Quick note as well. So in Visual Studio Code, when I go to any one of these and I click inside of here, and then I click down the next line, I'm just pressing return 1 time here. And you can see it's putting my cursor exactly where it needs to be. And it's also putting that closing tag where it needs to be. So if I'm writing something out, like let's just say I'm turning my image, my second image here, into an anchor tag. As soon as I close it, it's going to put me where I need to be. So if I just hit return, it's going to put me there. It's going to put me where I should have been. And I just made this a linked image that is now going to link. I would have to put an href on here of, I don't know if there's a nirvana.com, but let's find out. I'm sure there is. I don't know if it actually goes to Nirvana's site, but now we have a link here. So let's actually add a target underscore blank. So remember, the more those like little visual story hints are, the more dramatic or sensational they are, the more likely you are to remember them. Like the target, shooting at a target with blank bullets, or like whatever. I don't know how memorable that one really is, but I think Polaroids of Nirvana covered in a thick spaghetti sauce like that, that's kind of memorable. So the more it stands out to you, let your imagination run free, I guess. So anyways, when I go here and I refresh on his page, you can now see I have this pointer hand over here signifying that this is a link. So if I go over it, it's a link. And now when I go to the site, it does load up, and let's see. It looks like it's the actual band Nirvana. It has music and videos and all that. So we just made that image into a link. But what I was really trying to show was just the way it puts me in the mouse where it should be. And another thing, another hint that Visual Studio gives you, if I put, say, BR here, once I hit the closing angle bracket or the greater than sign, it doesn't give me that. It doesn't automatically fill out that other tag for me, or the closing tag. Whereas if I put, let's say, a paragraph, as soon as I hit this closing one, it's going to give me or as soon as I hit the closing angle bracket, it's going to give me the closing tag. So again, I can just drop down and start typing. It puts me exactly where I want to be. So that's another hint whether or not an element is self-enclosing or not, or a self-enclosed element. All right, so back to where we were. I wanted to show you that list and how we can nest other lists inside of there. And we can do the same thing with tables. I mean, I can put another table inside of this table. So they used to lay out websites in tables back in the day and use them for layout. And then technology has advanced, and today we definitely don't want to use tables to lay out our content. So that's something that I'm probably not going to even teach, because it's unnecessary information going into your brain. So with that, think of any questions you had, anything you were confused on. I might have misspoke a few times in this. I'm actually re-recorded this video because I had noticed in the other one when I watched it, I had misspoke a few times. So I definitely don't want to do that. We're going to have an assignment coming that's going to involve, using all these elements and doing something similar to this, to what we just did here. So you can always go back and reference this. I'll probably even put this file into Google Classroom or into the Slack account so you can go view it for yourself and study it. And just remember to write down those questions and look at your notes, or however you are doing this. Come back to me and we'll have a live Q&A where I can answer those questions. So I will see you at the next Q&A session or the next lecture. All right.